Dear chess fans, in this video I'm going to show you one more very interesting, instructive game played by Magnus Carlsen. He is playing with the black pieces against Anish Giri. It's played on chess.com, title Tuesday, blitz game, 3 minutes for both players, 1 second increment, and a lot of excitement. And most of all, you are going to learn something from this game as well. What it is, you'll find out in a few minutes. Let's just dive straight into the action. Make me one favor, hit the subscribe button, like this video, share it among your friends, and you can help supporting the channel by considering making a small donation via PayPal. Well, here we go. You want to see what happened in this game. Anish Giri played 1 e4 and Magnus goes for the French defense. d4, d5, knight c3, and we know there are various interesting ways of playing here with black. You can get out your bishop to b4, you can play the classical variation with knight f6. Taking on e4 is a good move, but the move played by Magnus is looking a little bit strange, but has been seen before as well. The move h6, sort of a waiting move, so that you're getting ready to bring out the knight to f6 without being disturbed by bishop g5 ideas. But of course, it's not a developing move. You're playing another pawn move, and well, white is trying to continue with his development. Played here the move knight f3, and after knight f6, here Anish Giri plays interesting move, but maybe not the most challenging one. There are various ways of continuing your development, but he decides here to take on d5. So that after e takes d5, we have sort of an exchange French variation, symmetrical structure. But these kind of symmetrical structures with only one open file, these top guys, they're very familiar with it. You can get it from the Petrov, from the Berlin defense, but also from the French opening. Let's go through the opening phase a little bit faster. Bishop d3, bishop d6, castling kingside by both sides. White places the rook on the open file. So it looks like white is just a little bit more active, but of course it's still very balanced. Knight goes to c6, and now white played the move knight b5, tickling the bishop on d6. If the bishop ever goes away, let's say it goes back, the bishop can come out to f4, and then the pawn on c7 will come under threat. So what black did here is knight b4. Good move by Magnus. So both sides are trying to eliminate their opponent's best bishop. Knight takes d6, queen takes d6, and the knight now comes into e5. Of course, black is also going to take on d3. So queen takes d3, and still symmetrical structure. But why is this going to be so exciting? You may think it's all because of the opposite colored bishops, which means that the same pieces are unable to contest each other because they are operated along a different diagonal. Rook e8, bishop comes to f4, setting up some pressure against the queen, maybe indirectly against the pawn on c7 as well. Black plays the queen on e6. May also look a bit strange, but okay, there's no good discovered attack with the knight. If knight goes away, probably the rook on e1 can just be taken. So knight goes back to f3, which means that the knight is defending still that rook. Everything is still under control. White is attacking the queen on e6. And here the knight comes into to e4. And white is winning a pawn. Bishop takes c7. Is this a blunder by Magnus? I don't think so. It could be that he had overlooked something, but I believe it was a very conscious decision by him as he moves the queen away to c6, hitting the bishop on c7. The bishop goes back, and now the bishop is being developed to f5. So here the same thing. Black is looking for sort of tactical opportunities against the queen on d3, and well, the queen goes away. And white will probably think about moves like knight e5 to attack the queen. And if the queen goes away, well, the queen also got to think about pawns on d5 and b7. So black prevents knight e5. Played here the move f6, covering the e5 square. White goes c3, moving that pawn away. Nice pawn structure. White is a pawn up. But now Magnus is trying to seize the initiative with some very impressive moves. First, he advances the pawn in front of the king, g5, hitting the bishop. The bishop goes to e3, and he just plays in a very calm manner. King g7, everything is under control because white is having an extra pawn. But how is white going to utilize that pawn? That is far from clear. It's very difficult to mobilize that pawn. Black is controlling that square. He can even put a rook on the c file. There are other ideas as well. For instance, now after the move knight d2, white is offering the exchange of knights. And of course, you may consider trading of knights. But Magnus played knight d6. So he's keeping pieces on the board. So his main plan, of course, is to maintain control over the c4 square. White is unable to make use of that square at all. Not able to aim for simplifications. And also the bishop on e3, it's not too great, cannot really move at all, so there's no opportunity for white to trade off rooks. And I dare to say that, well, the compensation for the pawn is definitely sufficient for black. White goes f3, and now black goes b5, cementing the control over the c4 square. White goes bishop f2. So here we see that rooks may come off the board. a5 is played. So black is further expanding here. And you can even say that probably black's bishop is a bit better than the bishop on f2. Because the bishop on f2, it's kind of stuck looking at its own pawns. Whereas, well, this bishop has possibilities to come in. And mark my words, a3 played. And the bishop comes to d3. Beautiful square for the bishop. So it also takes away a square from the king. And you can see that the queen on b3 doesn't have much scope. Cannot really easily move at all. And for instance, if white thinks, okay, I cannot do too much. Let's go for the exchange of pieces. Rook takes e8 was not played, but it's important to understand. So let's say the rooks are coming off the board. White goes rook e1 and everything gets swapped. Then the queen can also come into e8 with the idea to hit a bishop. And, well, maybe the queen comes to e2. I mean, white can still defend with queen d1. But what is white's plan? I failed to spot the constructive plan for white to make use of the extra pawn. Well, anyway, this was not played. White played the move h3, which is another type of waiting move. But here the knight comes to c4. Excellent idea. You're intending to take on d2. So white captures himself first. How to recapture? There are various moves. But Magnus, his reply is very, very instructive. He recaptures with the b pawn, attacking the queen. And, well, the queen also got the think of the pawn on b2. So there is this potential pressure along the half-open b file. So the queen actually, it went to a2. It's something I really don't like for white. I feel that the queen is offside. And hopefully, from black's perspective at least, black will be able to infiltrate via the other side of the board. But look at this. Black played a move queen a4. Very interesting move. With the aim of coming in to c2. And if you can get your rook to e2, and then maybe later the other rook to e8, or maybe even just rook b8, and then win the pawn on b2, how is white gonna defend against it? It's just that white is a pawn up. But his pieces, and particularly the queen on a2, but also the rook on a1, they are not good at all. White played rook ac1. Black goes rook ab8. And well, what should be done here? Well, you can still consider the exchange of rooks on e8, but this was not played. But it's understandable that white didn't play it. I mean, you cannot really go rook e1 here, because rooks will come off the board and the queen comes in. That is the drawback. When the rooks are not on the board, the bishop is hanging. If you protect it with the king, it's queen e2, king g1, and you take the bishop, your piece up. The reason white can still play this move is that after the exchange of one pair of rooks, the queen can come back to a1, preparing the rook to come to e1. If you go rook e2, rook e1, it looks very dangerous, but probably after something like rook d2, you can put a queen on c1, and it is not easy for black to ensure that the queen will come in. So anyway, this was not happening. Bishop g3 was played. But now, look at this. Rook to b7. Very nice move. The queen still defends the rook on e8. If you do go for the exchange now, there are even ideas to go rook e7 and try to infiltrate via this way. While in case of, let's say, rook e1, maybe the queen goes back to a4. And there are plans to come to c2 with pressure against the pawn on b2. This is not going to be fun at all. Instead, after rook to b7, white played queen a1. The queen is trying to make its comeback. And, well, there are ways to try to improve the position here. Black played here this move. Bishop to e2. Very instructive idea. We know it from an old game of Karpov against Unziker. in which black, in this case, I mean the trick, the technique is here to try to double on a file while interfering with your piece. So white is not able to contest it. But okay, queen b1 is played. And maybe, okay, you can try to kick the queen back, and there is queen a1 still. And well, the game continues. Probably you have ideas just to take on e1 and try to continue with black. I mean, it's your pawn down, but it's clear that black is pressing now. It was not played. Rook b e7 was played. The queen comes to c2, offering the exchange of queens. Queen goes back to c6, but you see the bishop on e2. It's very unpleasant piece to deal with. What should white do? Try to break free. That's what you gotta do here. b4, getting rid of your backward pawn, is a good technique. I mean, you can capture en passant and white recaptures. Still, the extra pawn is worthless because the bishop controls the c4 square. But at least, okay, you have some ideas of maybe trying to generate some play along the b file. Was not played. Queen d2 on the board. And now, there's no longer a chance to play the move b4 as black played the move a4, controlling the pawn on b2. The pawn on b2 is fixed. Rook c2 played. And now, interesting moment. I mean, it's a blitz game. Both players are getting lower on time. But Magnus missed here a very relatively easy shot. Can you find it? Pause the video. You can once again hit the subscribe button. And hopefully you then have spotted that bishop d3 is a really good move, as you are threatening the rook on c2, but also to enter on e2. If you go away with the rook, well, there is rook e2, and you're entering with a bang. The pawn on b2 is going to drop as well, but most importantly, black is looking for opportunities to play for an attack against the king. Anyway, let's get back to the game. Queen d7 was played. I mean, everything is still well guarded because you cannot take twice on e2, then you're losing your queen. Rook goes back to c1, the queen comes to f5. King h2, and black is just strengthening his position. h5, guys, is a very important move. The bishop goes away, it hits the rook, rook e6, bishop g3. Now the pawn goes to h4, and the bishop is in trouble. It went to c7, and bishop cannot be trapped. Can always try to come to a safer square. But you're running out of useful moves. The bishop cannot easily stay on this diagonal. The rooks can barely move. The queen cannot do really anything. Rook a1 is played. Looks like a very, very sad move. Now the bishop to d3. And look what Magnus is doing. He really wants to get a rook to e2. So rook takes e6. Queen takes e6. So you're controlling the open file. Rook e1 is not a possibility. And now you understand why black had advanced his pawn to h4. Because as long as the bishop would have been on g3, then you're not able to control the open file like that. That's why your pawn is on h4. Rook d1 played. And, well, now queen e2 played with the idea of swapping queens, enter with the rook on e2, and then try to win the pawn on b2. But king g1 played, queen e6. So this looks like it's going to be a repetition. Giri just went back with the king to h2 immediately. I mean, it's clear that he would be relieved to make a draw in this position. But he probably should have placed the bishop on a5. But more about that in a second. He played king h2. And this is the decisive mistake of the game. Because now there is this move. Queen to d7 with an attack on the bishop. And the bishop, well, it got to move. If you go bishop a5, there's queen d6, was played in the game, check. The king got to go back. And then it's rook e2, the rook enters. And now this bishop is no longer guarding the king side. The queen got to move. And then the black queen infiltrates on g3 with mate on the next move. So rook d2, queen takes g2. It is checkmate. Fantastic performance by Magnus. I mean, mistakes by both sides. No optimal play. But the strategy being applied by Magnus is super instructive. And that's why I wanted to show you this game. What could Anish still have done? Instead of king h2, he could have played here bishop a5. And the difference is that there's no convenient way of attacking the bishop. If you try queen a6 with a double attack, once again, like you're intending to go rook e2, here, rather than moving the bishop, rook e1 is a defensive resource for white. Because if you go for the exchange of rooks and then capture the bishop, then the queen is able to infiltrate. In the other line, black captured with the queen on c7 and the queen is still guarding the 7th rank. Here, if you go back with the king, it's just going to be a repetition of moves, and after king f5, queen d7, you probably just should go back to g6, because if you go king f4, all of a sudden it is the black king which will be caught in a mating net. After king f2, queen g4 is the mating threat. And if you prevent it with f5, there is queen d6 and you're getting mated. So, instructive, very difficult. I mean, a lot of mistakes, as I said. Very understandable, but it's instructive to see that black had been pressing throughout this game, despite being a minus pawn, having a minus pawn. His bishop is superior, and the bishop on d3 beautifully supports the other pieces as well. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of this game? Thanks for watching, and we will see each other very soon again. Bye bye.